So continuing on to the discussion of creating urgency. Do we really need this change? And if so, we need to tell people why now. Chaz shared good examples or good reasons why we should initiate change. I'm going to talk about some that are not so good. When we're talking about technology, just because you don't like the user interface or you feel like that's old, or a change because I just don't like how it feels or I just don't like doing it that way, is not a good reason for change. You can't really capitalize on that. User error, a lack of training, or an unwillingness to change, those are not great either. The current system that you have might be the right solution, you're just not using it in the way that it was intended to, or that has been optimized for your firm. Now, how to create that sense of urgency? Quantifying and clearly articulating the impact of not making the change. So if we do not make this change, let's put it into real dollars, how that's going to affect our bottom line. So a good example is if your principals are spending 20 hours a month doing something the old school way, maybe doing the backlog in Excel. If we automated that or moved to a specific technology, that could save that 20 hours a month and put that back to our bottom line. Putting that in real dollars makes that sense of urgency of, if we want to save money next quarter, this change has to be implemented. Also knowing what's at stake. So communicating clearly, this is what's going to happen to our clients if we don't make this change in our process. We're going to fall behind in our pursuits if we don't adopt this piece of technology. Building urgency is about concentrating on that window of opportunity open today that will close tomorrow.
All right, so now that we've established a sense of urgency, we know what that looks like. Now it's really important to make sure that we have the right team to lead the change. So let's talk about forming that guiding coalition. So the guiding coalition in many ways is the nerve center of the 8-step process. If you don't have the right team with enough capacity to manage a technology change at your firm, or any kind of change, I know I keep going back to a technology change, but a process change, a behavior change at your firm, then it's probably going to fail. And so this is what Dr. Carr calls your guiding coalition, and it really needs to be powerful. And if you have CEO, if it's a big change and you have CEO buy-in, that's really, really going to help you. But really making sure that you have a across the organization, you have a cross-functional team, you have all the right ingredients that you need in order to roll out a change. You have enough voices that are involved in the process that are part of your group that really can help you. And so even if it's just a behavior change or if it's a process change, making sure that you have the right people can make all the difference in the world. And also making sure that everybody's clear on why this change needs to happen now on your team.
Absolutely. Forming that right team is critical. Let's start with the IT department, breaking down what that team looks like. We're going to do some pros and cons of each section of the team. So really, pros, the IT people speak geek, they understand complex systems. The cons, they speak geek and they make things complex. So really making sure that they stay high level in adopting whatever this change in process or technology might be. Security concerns are real, though especially right now and everybody having gone virtual. So we do want to include them, but we also don't want it to restrict the change and moving forward. The next piece.
All right, so if we have a team that's administrative focused, or we have a lot of people from our admin team that's in charge of leading the change, there are some good things with that. You've got some detail-oriented people that know how to get things done, which can definitely pay off. But the problem might be, especially depending on the type of change that you're making, they may not have a deeper understanding of the company. So especially if you are rolling out a technology change, they may not understand some of the key things that are going to make a big difference in reporting and that kind of thing. they may not be able to get the support that they need to make the change. They may not have a vested interest in the proposed initiative, and even though they're part of the process, they may not care as much as maybe somebody else might in a more leadership role. That maybe some of their overall, maybe their bonus is tied to the result of what you're trying to roll out. And then also sometimes the administrative team that might be working on a change can be pulled in many different directions. So I've seen this happen a lot where they'll be like I'll be working with somebody during an implementation that might have a strong administrative focus, and they'll be pulled in many different directions, and it will make it really hard for them to stick with a technology change because they're trying to do a lot of other jobs and wear a lot of different hats. So if you have a member from the administrative team that's working on trying to roll out a change, or any member from your organization, if they're all working together, it's really important that they all have time set aside that they can really focus on making this initiative, or whatever kind of initiative it is, successful.
The next piece of the team is really that department head or the team lead. Now, they typically have a vested interest because it might be their idea of this change. Relying on traditional hierarchy and the ways that we've always operated can tend to cause problems in the sense of they have a long established behavior. They might not be the right person to continue to move things forward because they are too vested. They might not be equipped to lead the team, the ultimate team that you want to form. We need to go beyond the usual suspects in our organization to have more eyes, more brains, and more hands needed to accelerate the change effort. People need to be able to make the change happen, not just carry out someone else's directive. So if that leader whose idea that it was is on the team, they might be putting too much on trying to make it their version of the change. Now, opening it up to people outside of that typical hierarchy does uncover leaders at all levels. Forming the right team, when you get that perfect formula, it becomes the dream team. You've got one project manager with members from key departments. You've got multiple layers of the hierarchy representing many different functions. So accounting, IT, the technical staff. Receive information from the organization at all levels and all ranks, and the information and new ideas are able to flow. You've got various geography locations. If you have multiple offices, if you have multiple services, make sure that you've got people representing each service. The ability to maintain that energy, and most importantly, a commitment to the change initiative at hand. The linchpin of change management is accountability. Having a diverse group bound by the opportunity and strategy of action will help that accountability. That also leads us into step 3. Develop a strategy and a vision. In every successful transformation effort, Dr. Cotter says that he has seen the guiding coalition develops a picture of the future that is relatively easy to communicate, appeals to all. The vision needs to have coordinated activities or strategies. Now, Dr. Cotter defines strategic initiatives as targeted and coordinated activities that, if designed and executed fast enough and well enough, will make your vision a reality. This sounds simple, but not easy. The big key to this is that it can't just be data and facts alone. Now, for people like Chaz and I, who are data nerds, totally could be, but most are not like us. So you have to tie the head and the heart together. You can't just appeal through facts. Now, us as marketers are really great at this, and being able to strategize about the change in your firms and having a change campaign is critical so that you can account for how people feel and tap into what the amazing results will be and what are the possibilities when this change is implemented. Behind every vision statement, there is a problem or something that needs to change within the company. This can be painful, but if you tie it to the sense of urgency and the results that come out of the change, then you can capitalize on that. Now, we've got two examples that are capitalizing on pain. Now, pain is a really good initiative for change. Have you ever listed a reference on a proposal that turned out to not be at that firm anymore, may have been deceased, or God forbid, was giving you a bad reference? This is a huge mistake because your firm will look untrustworthy and like you don't have your stuff together. And if you can't even get a reference right, how can you design, engineer, or build my building? Now, you would be looking for a solution to make sure that that never happens again. Either a process to keep your references up to date, a system to keep track of all your references. Capitalizing on remembering that mistake would keep the urgency and be the strategy to initiate that vision. Now, I was hired at an engineering firm because they had the unfortunate situation of two different offices submitting proposals to the same client for the same project. So that client called the CEO and said, so do I get to pick the lowest bidder amongst yourself? How does that work? Of course, the CEO said that can never happen again. So they turned to their CRM to implement change and turn on workflows and notifications to make sure that that never happened again. Now, you betcha that when I was hired to implement that CRM, I made sure that that was my message. This can never happen again. Remember how painful that was? That's why we're doing this. That's why I need you to enter your opportunities. Now, making sure that your strategic actions are coordinated. They motivate and clarify. They clarify what actions need to happen. When creating those actions, remember to tie it back to the head and the heart, and regularly review what's been communicated and what the actions are behind that you're asking your employees to get behind.
All right, so now we definitely, we have a sense of urgency. We understand why we're making this change. We've formed the right team. We have a vision. We know what we're trying to achieve. We can see it. And now it's time to communicate for understanding and buy-in. So when rolling out a change, it can sometimes be underestimated how many times a message must be communicated. In the motive, Patrick Lencioni says that most leaders view themselves as the chief reminding officers. And I think nothing can be truer than when you're trying to communicate a new change and trying to communicate for buy-in. And there really can't be enough reminding and ways to communicate the message around the change. So, I know the parents out there have heard that phrase from your kids, are we there yet? Are we there yet? And on a change journey, we definitely want to know how long it's going to take. So making sure that you have a clear roadmap and it's documented where everyone who's involved with the change can see it. So it's very, very important to make sure you have that roadmap. Next, making sure that you have clear documentation is everything. Make sure that you have a reference for people to go back and look up key information. In your documentation, make sure that you really clarify new terminology or acronyms. And also, continue to find ways to drive people back to the documentation you've created. So as you communicate the changes being rolled out to your organization, make sure you always drive people back to your core documentation. In the same ways that you would craft a call to action in your marketing efforts, use those same skills to drive clients back to your website or your internal website or any place where you're housing your internal communications. So for example, if you were launching a new website or a new CRM, and you can definitely use your marketing talents to create an email campaign with a call to action that drives people back to your documentation or an internal SharePoint site. You can really get creative. This is where you as marketers can make a huge impact. You already know how to convey a new message to prospective clients. So go ahead and use this when marketing your change. Don't squander the opportunity to communicate your message well.